Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very, very excited to announce that we have the Historical Society of Palm Beach County here with us. And I'm going to go ahead and welcome Rose and Casey. So joining us today is Casey Lipschutz, Rose Guerrero, and Debbie Murray. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very, very excited to know what's happening. I think I need to be pulled down, John.
Sorry about that. I think someone might have the YouTube video open. Might be either Casey. Let's see. Casey, are you good?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. Someone had the YouTube video open in the background. I think Rebecca may have had that. That's okay. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're happy to have you with us. As Rebecca was saying, we have Casey Lipschutz and Rose Guerrero from the Historical Society of Palm Beach County, and Debbie Murray is actually in the chat box right now as a moderator as well. Just so you know, if you're in the chat box, we're asking you to please have appropriate conversations in there first and foremost. But in addition to that, please feel free to ask questions. Debbie's actually on the Historical Society's account from you guys so that she can answer questions if you guys have questions throughout the stream, because we are on a little bit of delay, so it's harder to get questions in here. So please feel free to ask your questions, students and teachers, as you come up with them, and remember to please keep it appropriate in the chat. So with that, Rose and Casey, I'll let you two take it away.
Thank you, John. Yes. Greetings. My name is Casey Lipschutz. I'm the Education Coordinator at the Historical Society of Palm Beach County. Our goal is to collect, preserve, and share the rich history of Palm Beach County. We have over 2 million photographs, maps, journals, periodicals, architectural drawings, and research files. Our main draw is the Richard and Pat Johnson Palm Beach County History Museum, which is located in the historic 1916 courthouse. Today, you're going to join us inside the museum to learn more about the history of Palm Beach County. You will be guided by our docents. Docents are guides that share and interpret history for us. If you have any questions during our program, please let us know. The beginning of your tour begins on the steps of the historic 1916 courthouse. Here we go.
Welcome to the Richard and Pat Johnson Palm Beach County History Museum. I am standing in front of the 1916 courthouse. This building is of neoclassical revival style. It is made of brick with limestone trim. If you look up at the portico, you will notice the eagle crest. The eagle is a very popular symbol in public buildings. In our country, it is one of our national symbols, and it means freedom and strength. Please join me as we go into the museum. Now that you come in, please look down. Notice the individual mosaics that make up this floor. Mosaics are individual tiny tiles that were hand-placed when this building was first built. It's possible that this floor was put in place by some of the people right here. We have a picture of the original crew that worked on this building. How many of us can say that we have a picture of the people that built our home? Before this building existed, the courthouse took place in an old school, which I think looks pretty crowded. The courthouse continued to grow because the population of the county continued to grow. There were many versions of the county courthouse, and now our courthouse is across the street in a beautiful modern building. We hope you will be able to come visit the historic courthouse soon.
So, what did you learn? Did you notice all the changes the courthouse went through? There was a time when the county planned to demolish the courthouse. A few community leaders came together and raised enough money to restore and save it. In our next segment, Alan will be talking about a famous shipwreck. It wasn't full of gold or silver or jewels, but treasure of a different kind. Here we go.
The early pioneers did not have a whole lot of materials that they could deal with, so they often searched the beach for any type of shipwreck material. One of the best shipwrecks they ever found was the Providencia, because it had 20,000 coconuts on this thing. It had some hides, and it had some log works, and they were able to salvage all this material. They sold the coconuts for 2.5 cents a piece. And the people that did buy the coconuts, they had and planted them in groves like we have behind us right here. It's coconut groves. So because they thought they might have a cash crop of coconuts. Well, it takes about 6 to 8 years before a coconut tree can grow big enough to handle coconuts. So that was 6 or 8 years they were waiting for some kind of a cash crop. It didn't occur. It never made it as a cash crop in Palm Beach County. So they would have these thousands of coconut trees giving off coconuts, but it did not make the money that the settlers wanted to. Now, one of the reasons Palm Beach has its name here, the town of Palm Beach, why Palm Beach, is because when they had their first post office, you had to have a name. So they put in the name Palm City. The government said there's already a Palm City in Florida. So they said, well, let's make it Palm Beach, and Palm Beach stuck.
Thanks, Alan. That was one of my favorite stories. If you have any questions, please let us know. Debbie Murray, our chief curator, is standing by. There are very few questions Debbie can't answer. In our next segment, we're going back more than 12,000 years to learn about the first Floridians. Rose Guerrero, our director of research, will be leading the way. Enjoy.
People have been living in Palm Beach County for over 12,000 years. These ancient people left evidence of their culture in shell middens and artifacts that were found here by archaeologists. What is a shell midden? A shell midden is a compilation of garbage that's grown over centuries made by our ancient people. What is an artifact? An artifact is any man-made material that has any cultural significance. Here are some examples of artifacts found here in Palm Beach County from our first Floridians. A spear point, a ceramic sherd, shell gorget, and our rarest artifact found here in our exhibits, a human effigy carved from wood made to represent a shaman. It was found in 1928 during road construction in Pahokee. After centuries of warfare, disease, and slavery brought on by European conquerors, the ancient people's culture died out and a new cultural group came to Florida. Given the name Seminoles by the Spanish, meaning unconquered ones, the Seminoles came to Florida in the 1700s, bringing a vibrant culture along with them that still stands today. Some of these cultural materials are their clothing, their toys, their weaponry, and their basket weaving artistic expressions. An example of this vibrant culture can be seen in this palm frond woven doll with a patchwork dress. When the first settlers made their way to South Florida, it was the Seminoles that helped them adjust to a unique environment and show them how to use the resources here.
Those artifacts were really cool. It's hard to believe that they still exist after such a long period of time. In the next segment, we will be learning about the first doctor in Palm Beach County and midwife, whose great-great-great-grandson is a well-known judge here in Palm Beach County. Take it away, Susan.
Did you know that the early pioneers had no medical help in this area? In fact, the closest doctor was all the way up in Titusville, which is near the Kennedy Space Center, and the closest hospital was all the way up in Jacksonville. Now, lucky for the pioneers, there was a doctor down in Miami who'd come from Ohio with his brother who had a lung condition, and they were escaping the bad weather. That was Dr. Richard Potter. And they were able to convince Dr. Potter to come up to this area and help all of the people. He was well respected. It is said he would walk miles on a beach to help someone and stay for them. He would also eventually buy a 20-foot launch that he would use to go up and down the intercoastal, because that's where everybody lived, and help them. Also, Dr. Potter had no offices or hospital. He had to make his own drugs. He would bring them in a case that he would carry. It would have all of his supplies in it when he went to help. He was also very lucky that earlier, a woman named Millie Gildersleeve had moved to the area. Millie Gildersleeve was a freed slave from Georgia, and she had come down in 1876 with the Dimmick family. What was wonderful about Millie, she was trained as a midwife. Do you know what a midwife does? A midwife helps women have babies. And Dr. Potter would come in his launch. He would pull up to Millie's dock, to a whistle. Millie would come down with her supplies, and they would go help the pioneer. Many of the descendants of the babies that Millie helped get born into this world are still here in Palm Beach County, including a descendant of hers who is her great-great-great-grandson and is a judge here, Bradley Harper.
Can you believe Dr. Potter made his own medicine? If you have any questions about Dr. Potter or Millie Gildersleeve, please let us know. In our next segment, Suzanne will be talking about the dramatic story of Sheriff Bob Baker and the notorious Ashley Gang. This has all the makings of a blockbuster movie. Here we go.
I'm going to tell you a famous story about Palm Beach County. There were two young men who played baseball together, but broke up over a girl. One of them became Sheriff Bob Baker, and the other one, John Ashley and his notorious Ashley Gang. Sheriff Bob was on the side of the law, and John Ashley and his gang robbed trains and robbed banks, and the two of them were at odds, a feud for 13 years. But finally, John Ashley and his gang decided they need to get out of town, so they headed north. But little did they know, there was a trap, and they were stopped, and all of them were killed. And that was the end of the Ashley Gang, but Sheriff Bob Baker continued to serve Palm Beach County.
That was very interesting. One of my favorite parts of history. Do you know when the first public school opened, or who the first teacher was? You're about to find out. Mary is going to be talking about the first schools here in Palm Beach County. Take it away, Mary.
The first public school opened in Palm Beach County in March of 1886. This was on Palm Beach Island, and they had a single room, a small school with one long table and 7 students. The teacher was a 16-year-old Haiti Gale, younger than some of her students, who ranged in age from 6 to 17. The school stayed there for a few years and then moved across what was then known as Lake Worth of the Intercoastal to West Palm Beach. At about the same time, a black school for students was established on Palm Beach as well at the Mount Olivet Baptist Church. At that time, there were separate schools for black and white children. When the church moved over to West Palm Beach, so did the black students go with them. Fast forward until 1954. The United States Supreme Court, the highest court in our land, decided that racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. 2 years later, in 1956, William Holland Sr., a local Palm Beach lawyer, the first African-American lawyer in West Palm Beach and the first municipal African-American judge, wanted to enroll his son, William Jr., in a local white elementary school. His son was denied admission. Mr. Holland, being a lawyer, didn't like that, and he filed a lawsuit in the federal court. He lost at the trial level, but Mr. Holland did not give up and filed in the U.S. Court of Appeals in New Orleans, which covers this district, and he won. And that court held that the Palm Beach County schools must desegregate. That was 1958. Unfortunately, that desegregation was not fully implemented until the early 1970s.
Wow. Can you believe the first school teacher in Palm Beach County was only 16 years old? We've been learning a lot about Palm Beach County. Let us know which part of the museum you find the most interesting. In our next segment, you will be learning about the early pioneers, what life was like for them, and how did they get their supplies. Enjoy.
South Florida became open to the pioneers once the Jupiter Inlet Lighthouse was built in 1860. The lighthouse was built because right off of our coast here in Palm Beach County is a beautiful reef system. And right next to the reef system is the Gulf Stream, which is a current of water that could take the ships to the north of the United States. Ships going to the south had to stay inside the Gulf Stream and closer to the reef, and thus causing shipwrecks. Right after the lighthouse was built, though, the country went into the Civil War. So there was a space of time before anybody actually came down to work and live here in South Florida. Once the war was over, the lighthouse had a lighthouse keeper and a couple of assistants. And once the people started living here, they realized what a nice place it was because of the weather. Those that worked at the lighthouse could go to the top and look to the south, and they saw this beautiful freshwater lake, Lake Worth, which is about 22 miles long and was fresh water. So some of them decided that they wanted to settle here, but there was nothing here for them. There were no stores. In fact, the closest store was 135 miles north of here in Titusville. There was no lumber, so they had to use whatever they had available in order to fashion their houses. So the first homes were made out of palmetto palms. They were a little rudimentary. In fact, when they were first cut, they looked nice. They were green. However, as they dried out, the houses leaked and they attracted all kinds of bugs, snakes, and lizards. So it was pretty rough life. However, I mentioned the shipwrecks off the shore. And when there was a shipwreck and merchandise came floating in off the ships, it became available to everybody who was living here at the time. And they were able to upgrade their houses with some of the canvas from the ships and from the lumber. That made their everyday living a little bit easier. Now, I mentioned the closest store was 135 miles north of here. So to get there was a couple of days' trek. However, the pioneers would take whatever merchandise they got off the ships that were valuable, such as nails and whatever other metals, and also some of the produce that they were able to grow in their farms, and take this merchandise to Titusville and sell it, and then in turn buy some of the other things that they didn't have readily available here, like sugar and flour, and they would bring it back. Once lumber became available, then they upgraded their houses.
Life was not easy for the early pioneers. They had to be very resourceful. In the next segment, we will be learning about the barefoot mailman. They had a very important job to do. I hope you enjoyed this new video.
How long do you think it takes a letter to get from here to Miami today? Well, in 1884, it took 8 weeks. The letter would start here where we are, and it would go north on waterways, and then it would get to Jacksonville and go across on a train. It would get on another boat in Cedar Key, go down the Gulf, and go around the Keys and arrive in Miami. Took 8 weeks, and the post office decided that it would be faster to walk. So they recruited 19 men to be what became known as the barefoot mailmen. And they were barefoot, not because they didn't have shoes, but because it was easier and faster to walk on the hard sand. 80 miles of the trip was on sandy beaches, and 56 miles of it was across waterways in little rowboats. There were 2 men I want to tell you about particularly. One was a Mr. Burkhart, who believed that for his health, it was important to get all the sun you could. So he walked naked. I also want to tell you about Mr. Hamilton, who unfortunately died in the service of the post office as a barefoot mailman. He was at an inlet and his boat was on the other side. He folded his clothes, his boots, and the mail and put them up in the tree and probably went into the water to get the boat, and he was never found again. This route lasted for 9 years until the road was opened and stagecoaches could take the mail from here to Miami.
What a great story. If you have any questions or comments, please let us know.
So Rose, what story or exhibit from our museum do you like best?
Oh, I love the story about Dr. Potter and Millie Gildersleeve. I think it's a great example of how difficult things were during pioneer times and how they had to travel so far to find a doctor before there was a doctor in the area. How about you?
Well, it's hard to choose, but I like the barefoot mailman.
Why is that?
It's such a unique part of Florida history. Not only that, it was a very important job, and it must have been full of adventure. I would have liked to give it a try.
Really? It's a dangerous job.
I know, but it must have been exciting at times too.
Oh, I'm sure it was very exciting. Well, in our next segment, we will be learning about different types of soil. Have you ever dug around in your own backyard? Do you know how much or what is muck? Let's find out with Alan.
We're here because we are going to take you into your backyard and see what we can find by digging into your backyard with your parents' permission.
What we're going to find, first of all, is some sand. That's this one right here. Then we can also possibly find sand and shell, because this used to be at a beach the entire time that it was producing animals and the sand coming down from other areas. This was whole South Florida was a beach. Now, under that sand, we're going to have possibly some white sand. And some white sand is that because it does not have the impurities in this, that came from this black material right here, which we call muck. Under this white sand, we have a yellow sand. The yellow sand is an iron oxide that has been broken loose at the same time the rest of the sand was broken loose, and it colored it a gold or a yellow color. Some shells also have iron oxide, and they can contribute to that color. The muck that we have, some places calls it peat. It is created when vegetation drops down into a wet area and decays by various organisms using it for a food source. If we put all these together, we could go down to the lowest level, the lowest layer of materials that we have in the county, and that is our shell rock layer or limestone layer or compressed limestone, where pressure created this massive layer underneath all this. And then we would have this material in stages on top of that limestone. And somewhere in here will be layers of muck. It could be at the top, it could be down below, it could be in the middle. This comes from natural environment, and it's talked about a little bit in this book, Black Gold and Silver Sands. This is the black gold, this is the silver sands. Now, if we take this sand and melt it down at about 1300 degrees, this is what we can make out of the sand, which is silicon dioxide, and this is silicon dioxide sand, and it can make into glass.
Wow. Did you know Palm Beach County farmers grow over 26 varieties of vegetables? We have muck to thank for that. In our next segment, we'll be talking about the wealthy visionary person who changed Palm Beach County for forever. Do you know who I'm talking about? Let's find out who he was and what he did. Enjoy.
So the pioneer era came to an official end with the arrival of Henry Flagler. Henry Flagler was one of the founders of the Standard Oil Company, along with John Rockefeller, and made millions and millions of dollars. Later in life, he turns his attention to Florida, where he started building and buying hotels and adding to a railroad he had purchased. Henry Flagler came down to the Palm Beach area in 1892, and there were a couple of hotels, like the Coconut Grove House, that were already in operation, and there was a tourist industry going on. But he realized that he can improve upon what was already here. The weather was beautiful, and the area had a lot to offer. So he bought land between the Atlantic Ocean and Lake Worth, and within 2 years built the Royal Poinciana Hotel, one of the most luxurious hotels in the world, about 500 rooms. Business was so good that he eventually increased it to 1,100 rooms. He brought his railroad down the east coast of Florida, and it came right to the hotel front door. Then he added another hotel on the ocean side, because a lot of people said they wanted to stay where the breakers were. In fact, that's what the name of the hotel became, the Breakers Hotel. So in addition to having all the tourists down in this area and dining and entertaining at his hotels, some of the locals decided they wanted to take advantage of the tourists coming here. And one of them was Warren Frazee, who was also known as Alligator Joe. He had a little zoo with exotic animals in it, but the main attraction was the alligators. And he would wrestle with the alligators in the water. He would throw an alligator in the water. He would jump on top of it, wrestle with it, tie up its snoot, and drag it out, to the delight and the amazement of the people. So that was one of the first entertainment complexes in South Florida.
We owe a great debt to Henry Flagler. If you have any questions for us about him, let us know. We'd be happy to answer them. In our next segment, we'll be stepping into the 1916 courtroom. I hope you get the chance to visit the courtroom in the near future. It is spectacular. Take it away, Mary.
Welcome to the 1916 Courthouse Courtroom. This building was first built in 1916 and occupied in August. Previously, the courthouse had been in a schoolhouse located at the corner of Clematis and Daisy Highway. This particular room resembles, but we cannot say it's an exact depiction of the way the courtroom was that day, because unlike today, when there are even TVs in the courtroom, no photographs were allowed inside the courtroom. This particular courtroom, though, resembles what a modern-day courtroom would look like today. The participants in the trial are basically the same positions they are today. For example, right now I am standing in what is called the well of the court. There is a divider here, a wooden rail. That is called the bar, and perhaps some of you have heard the phrase passing the bar. So typically lawyers are allowed to come into the well, as well as the other trial participants, including the witnesses, so they pass the bar, which is a phrase that's used now for lawyers admitted to practice law. Right here beside me are two tables. The table closest to the jury box, which is beyond it, is where the government sits when prosecuting a case, or where a plaintiff who's bringing a civil action sits. On the other side, the other table here, is the table for the defendant, both in a criminal and civil case. Behind me, I have the judge's bench. He sits up on high, he or she, and the judge decides basically who's going to be on the jury, rules on questions of evidence, accepts the verdict, instructs the jury. He runs the courtroom. To the judge's left sits the courtroom clerk. She or he is a recorder of what occurs in the courtroom in summary fashion, orders, accepts the verdict. And then to the left of the courtroom clerks, it's the bailiff. The bailiff is typically a police officer, and the police officer's responsibility is to maintain order in the courtroom. On my other side, we have the witness stand. The witnesses are called from the gallery into the well to testify by the bailiff. And then across from the witness stand is the jury box where the jurors sit. So if you went into a modern day courtroom, it would be basically the same configuration, the same trial participants. Now this particular courtroom is unusual, I think, in that it has a balcony. Now this was both a civil and criminal courtroom. It was also both a circuit and county court. And in Florida, we have a system of county courts and circuit courts. The circuit courts are the highest trial courts and also have appellate jurisdiction over the county courts. The county courts are trial courts of lesser offenses. If we look around the courtroom, we can see its size and beauty and simplicity, and I invite you all to come and enjoy it. Thank you.
I hope you get the chance to visit us in the near future. I really think you'd enjoy it. Before we go, our president and CEO, Jeremy Johnson, has a few parting words.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Johnson, president and CEO of the Historical Society of Palm Beach County. And I hope you've enjoyed your virtual tour of the Richard and Pat Johnson Palm Beach County History Museum.
Well, that was a great field trip, Casey.
It sure was. I enjoyed it.
Do we have any questions, John?
Awesome. Thanks so much. First of all, I appreciate you guys for joining us. As a non-Palm Beacher native here, I learned certainly a lot, and I saw quite a few people in the chat did as well, including what I didn't know is one of our colleagues actually is, I think he said his wife's great-great-grandfather was a barefoot mailman. So That's kind of cool how history still is around here every day, and you don't even realize it. So I didn't see any other questions in the chat, but there was some great content in there, chatting back and forth. So I do appreciate that a lot. And now that we're kind of phasing in and out, is there any ideas on if you guys are going to open anytime soon? Have you guys any of that info that you know yet, or no?
Well, we're hoping to open soon, but we don't have an exact date yet. So we're still waiting to see what the county says.
Okay. So keep an eye on your website, right? That would probably be where the closest thing.
Pay attention to our Instagram and our Facebook and our website. We will be letting everyone know when we are open again. We're so excited to invite guests back in.
Yeah, for sure. I noticed that one of our teachers in the chat said that they visit there every year. So I know it's difficult this time of year when kids are actually going out on these field trips and they weren't able to make it this year. So we appreciate that you were able to bring it to our students as well. So with that, we're gonna, if you have any questions in the chat, please feel free to continue to ask them. Debbie is in the chat still, and we're just gonna go over a couple of other things, and we'll give Casey and Rose the last few words here. So with that, we would like you guys to share your thoughts with us. So what we would like to do is, if you're in Palm Beach County, if you're one of our students or teachers, you are more than welcome to share your thoughts on the Flipgrid. The link is in the chat box, or you can scan the QR code. This will allow us to get your feedback. You can share your thoughts with Casey, Rose, and Debbie about what your favorite thing that you learned in Palm Beach County history was today. So please feel free to share that with us. We would love to hear what you guys are thinking. And for teachers, excuse me, there are other resources as well. There are the website to the Historical Society is available on our website, along with 2 articles to Newsella. One talks about Florida, the Sunshine State, and another is learning about the past article as well. Those are on Newsella, which again are linked right on our website for our experiences, which is bit.ly/PBC virtual experiences. Keep in mind, all bit.lys are case sensitive, so the P, B, C, and E all need to be capitalized. And with that, later today, thank you for joining us, Historical Society, at 10 a.m. We are going to have a legal panel with lawyers from across the world who fight pharmaceutical companies and other some of the bad guys out there and try to help people who may not be able to have representation. And then at 2 p.m., we're going to have an author, Stephen Winkelstein, who is an author who talks about, like, one of his stories is about the Holocaust. So he's going to read an excerpt from his story, and he will share a little bit about his career that took him to becoming an author as well. And so with that, again, I want to thank Casey, Rose, and Debbie for joining us. And with that, I will turn it back over to Casey and Rose to give you guys the last word.
Sure. I just want to thank you very much for inviting us to participate. This has been wonderful. And again, I hope you get the chance to come and visit us in the near future.
Yes, absolutely. It was a pleasure showing you guys our museum. Hopefully you'll be there soon. We miss having our school tours. But stay safe, and thank you for this virtual experience.